I believe that heaven must be like this ray of sunshine kissed upon your skin. Just say you love me, make my day go good. Pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And already heard, no matter what I say, it's nothing but a word. Nothing but a word. Just let me prove what I know is real. It's real.
Hello and welcome to Synamon Says this evening. I'd like to welcome my online guest as well as the guest in the audience this evening. We have as our special guest, J. Tom Morgan. And before I talk about J. Tom and introduce him, there are a couple of things I just wanted to go over with you all. First of all, my sponsors. Thank you so much, Bridget Long, Janice Hughes, Eric Alexander. And we have a new sponsor, the Holiday Inn at Old Dixie Road in Jonesboro, as well as several others, Leslie Military, Michael Hightower. To all of you, I want to say thank you so much for making our show possible this evening, and for all the other shows that we'll have after this. Your sponsorship makes it possible. I also want to talk about the Democratic Party's upcoming meeting on this Monday, March the 23rd. Michael Thurman will be the guest for the meeting at the Democratic Party. It's at 7 p.m. held at Morrow City Hall. Please join the Democratic Party and their members for a very important meeting and an opportunity to talk with Michael Thurman and get some good questions answered about jobs and training. Also, Clayton County-wide Homeowners Association will be having their first meeting of the year on Saturday, March the 28th at the National Archives. The theme this year is Our Homes, Our Investment, Our Responsibility. The first meeting will be composed of workshops and seminars, a workshop on foreclosure prevention, as well as a seminar on property tax assessments and mortgage fraud. I encourage each of you who understand how important it is for us to be involved in the housing crisis to please show up at that meeting, that very first meeting. Everybody's not in foreclosure. Everybody's not about to lose their home, but guess what? We're all underwater, meaning that the value of our homes is not equal to what we pay in terms of what the cost is. So come to that meeting and be sure to bring someone with you. You'll have an opportunity to meet with professionals in modifications, for refinancing. All of that will be available to you on that day. Then there's Friday night, Andy Lee Productions. I'm sorry, it's Saturday night. Tomorrow night, as a matter of fact, Andy Lee Productions presents its open mic at Silver Delight, located in East Point. So be sure to stop by there at 7 o'clock. Then there's, oh, this is really great. This is because this is in Clayton County. Say Anything Youth Poetry every third Saturday at the Coffee Spot. Coffee Spot is located at 10249 Tower Boulevard from 3 to 5 every third Saturday. That sounds great. Okay, then finally, next week, and I'll mention this again afterwards, we have Judge Steve Teskey as our guest, and he'll be talking with us about the new gang initiative, and I don't know a lot about it, so I'll save that for him. Okay. I was trying to get it all out of the way so I could devote the rest of the show. Okay, the rest of the show to you. As I said to you all, we have as our guest this evening J. Tom Morgan. J. Tom Morgan is the author of Ignorance is No Defense, a teenager's guide to Georgia law, which is so extremely important. I'm going to let him talk to you about that. But you know, the one thing that I realized when I was doing my research before you came on the show, there was a quote that you have, and it was so striking, and that quote says, "If our criminal laws treat teenagers as adults, our society has a moral obligation to educate our teenagers, and we need to do it now.
That's why we wrote the book, Synamon. I feel, as I know you feel, that if we're going to hold 13-year-olds accountable as adults in our society, and Georgia at 17 holds all teenagers accountable as adults. You know, we're one of only 4 states in the country that treat 17-year-olds as adults. The rest of the states are 18, some is 19. Then it must be our responsibility as adults to teach our teenagers what these laws are.
Right, and I think it becomes increasingly important when you find that ignorance of the law is causing our teenagers to lose eligibility to go to college, eligibility for employment, even enfranchisement, the vote, because once they become either a felon, or a former felon, whatever, they lose their right to vote in the state of Georgia. So I think, again, it's, as you say, it's very important that the laws exist the way that they do, that we do something to make sure that our children know what the law is, at least give them a fair chance.
And Synamon, what we did when we released the book, we came up with a very simple test, so some very simple questions. For example, how old are you before you are an adult under Georgia laws? And we found that almost 80% of the students in Georgia, and we tested hundreds of students, did not know very basic concepts, like when are you an adult, the 7 deadly sins that you and I will talk about later, that you can be prosecuted as an adult for 13, the DUI laws, the minor in possession laws. It was shocking and very frightening that our young people, that actually it's our responsibility. We're saying, why don't they know it? Well, they don't know it because we haven't taught them.
We haven't taught them. And you know what else, J-Time? We don't know. Adults don't know. You know, a lot of adults don't know what the law is, and I think that by bringing it to our children, we learn from our children too. The opportunity for you to interact with the children, I'm sure they share that information with their parents.
The technology. I mean, Synamon, since you and I met and you had that wonderful program at the National Archives, one of the big things that's come up with our teenagers now, and you and I have not had a chance to talk about, is sexting. Newsweek had a special. Newsweek had a special last week. NPR had a special. NBC. And for example, the typical sexting, and this isn't the only way, is that a teenage girl would take a picture of herself with her cell phone nude and send it to her boyfriend. Well, one is, I tell teenage girls, don't take your clothes off in front of anyone unless you want to see yourself on the internet. But 2, that's child pornography, because under Georgia law, and I explain to the kids, don't make me explain it, I can't rationalize it, I'm just here to tell you what they are, is that under Georgia law you can have sex at 16, but you can't take the picture of anyone with their clothes off, including yourself, until they're 18. And if you take that and send it using a cell phone to, you know, your boyfriend, then you've committed internet child pornography, which is a 20-year felony in this state.
Oh, God. And you know, when you say that, that's just, it really, really hits you, because you think in terms of a child doing something, a young person doing something innocently, and it can change their entire life.
Well, that's why I was talking about technology. You know, I grew up with my grandma in South Georgia, and we had one of those rotary dial phones stationed permanently on the kitchen wall. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that phone could come off the wall and I could take it with me.
Right.
And I must say, never in my wildest dreams did I think that phone could take a picture of anyone. Right. But Synamon, I must tell you, never in my wildest dreams did I think anybody would take their clothes off and let me take a picture of them with a telephone. So, but I tell you what, these kids have technology that's far beyond us, Synamon.
Yes, they do. And as the technology advances, the laws change, and they create laws to address the issues that come up in that. Now, you mentioned about you said the word sexting. Would you please explain to our audience exactly what that is? Because a lot of times we don't get it in terms of the terms that are being used. We don't know what that is, and the kids know, but we don't know. Well,
a lot of kids in our country have been arrested the last 3 to 6 months since you and I first met. Sexting comes about in 2 ways. One is the way I explained to you, where a teenager, typically a teenage girl, takes a picture of herself and sends it to her boyfriend, especially over Valentine's Day. And I tell the young girls that, you know, that's a trophy for that young boy. You think he's going to keep it to himself? No, he's going to go show everybody else.
Right.
2 problems there. The girl who takes the picture, she's committed the crime. The boy who keeps it commits the crime. He sends it to his best friend, and then there's a 3rd crime. So all of them are 20-year felonies, because the girl makes it, the other boy takes it and distributes it, and the other boy keeps it, they each have committed a felony. That's one form of sexting. The other is where a teenager will take his cell phone or her cell phone or computer and solicit sex. Well, if that person that you send that text message to is under 16, then they also have committed a crime. That's another form of sexting. Those are probably the two most typical ways of sexting. Both are crimes, and both are getting kids in a lot of trouble.
Getting them in a lot of trouble. What about this in terms of when children say there's this terroristic threat? They can be charged with terroristic threats, which is a felony.
It is a 1 to 5 year felony. And again, when you and I were growing up, somebody would threaten you because you were, messing around with their boyfriend or their girlfriend. You just kind of, or you go behind the playground and take care of business and then get over it. But no more. And then one of the problems is it is a different world because of weapons and everything else. But we've got internet bullying, which is a crime, and also terroristic threats, which means if you threaten to do bodily harm to another person, that's terroristic threats. You send it over, good point, you send it over your cell phone, you send it over the internet. Nobody writes notes anymore or just says it face-to-face like when you and I are growing up. Then that is a terroristic threat, and that's a 1 to 5 year felony. Okay,
then let me just say this. Is it a terroristic threat if I say to you, if you don't do what I tell you to, I'm going to kill you?
Absolutely.
Or, that's a little drastic. If you don't do what I ask you to, I'm going to beat you down.
If you keep messing with my girlfriend, I'm going to beat you down. That's a terroristic threat.
That's a terroristic threat.
That's right.
Our children do not realize that because, as you say, things have changed since we were.
Well, what happens is they memorialize it because instead of me and you talking to each other, they'll send it over a cell phone. And the person who receives it, now he's got it on a cell phone. He can take it to the police.
Okay. All right, you have a question from the audience. Is it okay if we take it now?
But I hope it's for you, Synamon.
Oh, no! Synamon does not have anything to say.
Our viewer would like to know, what event, if any, influenced your decision on writing your book? And what has surprised you most from the responses of those who have read it?
Wow. It was a culmination of events. And I mean, one is, when I left being district attorney, I started representing a lot of kids who were getting in trouble. And I must say it wasn't a mission or passion, but the more I started talking to these kids, I found out they did not know the laws. Actually, my clients came in 2 categories. They did not know the laws, or they did not appreciate the consequences. So I started compiling these laws together and putting them in, one day thinking maybe I would write a book. And as you know, because you and I talked about it, that was a very, very long process.
Right,
but I'll tell you the case that put me over the edge was that 2 young girls were at a bar in DeKalb County. They were 20-year-old Emory students. And they were drinking, and they produced a fake ID. And the officers arrested them and took them to jail. And then the parents were in Greenville, South Carolina, and said, get our daughters out of jail, and we want you to represent them. And I called Sheriff Brown. Sheriff Brown's a good friend of mine. Not the sheriff who tried to kill me, but the sheriff afterwards. Our new sheriff. Good sheriff. And he said, J. Tom, I can't let you out of jail because they're charged as terrorists. I said, Sheriff, what are you talking about? He said, didn't you know after 9/11 we passed a law that said if you have a fake ID with a government logo, you're now a terrorist. And you can't get out of jail unless you're a Superior Court judge. Well, it took us 3 days to get these girls out of jail. Now, the good news is, and this is what I tell parents, and this is why your show is so important, is that adults became aware of that. And they said, whoa, legislature, how many terrorists have we arrested in Georgia with a fake ID? Well, we got a lot of kids. No, kids should not be having a fake ID, but they're not terrorists either. And so when that case hit, I said, we need to do a better job educating, because I, as a 23-year prosecutor, did not even know about that law.
When you came to talk with us at the archives, you talked about one thing in particular that has really stayed with me, and that is the fact that when our young people are are getting involved in these kinds of situations and not knowing the law, then they become almost like victims.
Well, they're a victim of our society and our criminal justice system in that we have not done a good job educating them. And then, Synamon, I cannot say how strongly I feel that our young people should not be treated as adults at 17.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that.
You know, that if I was king for a day, the first law I would change would be that one. Because once you get a criminal history on your 17th birthday, it stays with you until the day you die. And why is the rest of the country, you know, your criminal history doesn't start until your 18th birthday? Just like you said, Synamon, getting a job, getting a Hope Scholarship, the right to vote. Well, if they were 17 in every other state, they would be treated as a juvenile and given another chance, but not here in our state, and it makes no sense whatsoever.
Is there any movement in the legislature to change this?
Well, the movement has come from the Young Lawyers Association of Georgia. I am very proud that the Young Lawyers Association has made this their top priority, but they have gotten pushback from the legislature. And the legislature says, no, we can't do that because we would appear soft on crime. I'm going, well, maybe you're soft on common sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like to me. Well, another question from the audience.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we have a viewer who would like to know, are any of his books in middle schools or high schools? That's where a lot of incidents take place.
Oh, that's a good question.
That's a very good question. The book has been put out there by the Georgia PTA. Okay. Now, let me tell you, the Department of Education was very nervous about this book, Synamon. You and I talked about this because I talk about crimes involving oral sex. I talk about crimes involving drugs, you know, things that maybe make some adults uncomfortable, but we're putting kids in jail for these crimes.
Right.
And so, but the Georgia PTA looked at the first draft, and they sent out an email to every PTA in Georgia, and that's when you and I first met. And since then, I've spoken to 85 schools.
Oh, okay.
Most of them
is in Georgia?
Just in Georgia. So what happens if a PTA or a youth organization buys 100 or more books at their rate, at the school rate, I'll come to a student assembly without charge.
Yeah, and we love that. As a matter of fact, we got you down for the 18th, so anybody that date's off, April 18th, he's with us. All right, that sounds great. Now, just tell me this. What are some of the crimes that you find that the children commit the most that they don't know about that lands them? And I'm speaking of felonies. I know I'm trying to focus on felonies because it just has such devastation in their whole lives. But what are some of the things that you find that the kids are doing, or that, you know, just, is there anything in particular?
Sure. First, let's start with misdemeanors. Minor possession of alcohol and less than an ounce of marijuana. Probably the two most prevalent.
Oh, okay. Alcohol and marijuana.
Yeah, and I tell this in a minute. Remember when you and I were growing up? When I turned 18, I could walk in any bar in Albany, Georgia, and order a beer. And I remember I played my last high school football game on a Friday night. The next day, I turned 18 years old, and I could walk into any bar in Albany, Georgia, and order beer. And I did. Ordered a pitcher of beer and a dozen raw oysters. That's before we knew about hepatitis. Remember our mantra said, if I'm old enough for you to send me to Vietnam and die for my country, I'm old enough to order a beer.
I remember that.
Well, what happened is then the country raised the drinking age to 21. We're the only country on the planet with a drinking age of 21. And it's created criminal records for a lot of our kids, particularly our college students. Marijuana, you know, when I talk to kids, you know, I disappoint them because they think they've invented marijuana. I say, hey, it's been around a long time. On felony, Synamon, you hit the felony, terroristic threats. You know, they're blowing steam. But when they memorialize it on an email or on a text message, then the police can look at it. The other one, and this is the one that's just recently come about. If you looked at the paper last week, you saw there was a big sting of 50 people arrested for child pornography in the state.
Yes.
GBI sting.
Yes.
Well, and child pornography is horrible. Okay, it's disgusting, and if there's child pornography, a child's been hurt. But what I have found, there's a 14-year-old boy, a 16-year-old boy, and two 17-year-old boys, and then a whole bunch of other people. But what the boys were doing, they were going on a pornography webpage, and they were downloading what they thought was teenage, 15, 16, 17. And what they were also getting was a lot of child pornography. And they should have hit the delete button when they realized it, but they didn't, and the GBI was tracing the IP address. And so now these kids, good kids, straight A students, never been in trouble a day in their life, are now facing child pornography charges.
Which is a felony.
And I helped, you're right, it's a felony, and I helped work on that statute, and that statute was really, very bluntly, to stop perverts, people who are turned on by child pornography. A 17-year-old boy is not the child pornography. It's sort of like, he gets all this stuff, and he doesn't, and he should have deleted. But so that's where we see some felonies come in. The oral sets, fortunately, now is a misdemeanor. Gennaro Wilson, the Gennaro Wilson case. He got 10 years in prison without parole because at that time, oral sets with anyone under 16 was a felony. The legislature changed it. It's called the Romeo and Juliet exception because of Gennaro. So 16-year-old, 15-year-old is a misdemeanor, but 19-year-old, 15-year-old is still a felony, 10 years in prison without parole.
Wow. Another question. This stuff is just overwhelming.
We've got a viewer who would like to know, are there any plans on taking the book tour on the road?
Well, we've been on the road, and fortunately there's a lot of interest. And Synamon, I got to thank you a lot, because Clayton County and a lot of the schools that I've been to down here, it's because of your interest. As I said, we've been to 85 schools since the book was released. Rockdale County got a grant for me to go to every middle school. Cobb County got a grant for me to go to every high school to speak to second language students. And so it's taken off. So there's obviously a need in our educational system. And it's not for me in the book, it's for this subject area.
Absolutely. So tell me, what can we do? 20 Women Dialogue. We really want to make sure that we get as much coverage in Clayton County, particularly in terms of your work in the book. And what is it that we can do what can we do to make sure that we educate our young people and adults in the process here in Clayton County? How can we get, like you said, you went to Rockdale, you were in Cobb County. What is it that we need to do in Clayton County to make it happen for us here, that we can get you, and we don't have to just keep bringing you back over and over?
Well, I don't mind coming back soon. Well, you and I know that our school systems are strapped. It's a tough economy. And so when parents get together, and this has been parent-driven, word of mouth. I have not spent one dime on marketing. All this has been word of mouth. You and I learn about each other because of word of mouth. Is that when the parents get together and they buy 100 books, then I will come speak to the students and then to the parents later that evening without charge. And on weekends is when I, like some of your church organizations, it's hard, I do have a family and I go to my own church, but I try to work in the churches on the weekends on a when I can basis. But I'm also a lawyer, and I try to keep a law practice going too.
Okay, another question from our audience.
Yes, a viewer would like to know, does he have a website where parents and children can go for more information?
He most certainly does.
Synamon has a website. It's ignoranceisnodefense.com.
Very simple. Name of the book, ignoranceisnodefense.com. And most of you, if you're a part of my network, you have that information, and we want you to pass it along to everyone else. Yeah. Well, this is good. If I had to ask you one question, I think that question would be, what is it that parents can do? Of course, you told us about buying the book, but what can we as parents do to make sure that our children do not fall victim to the justice system?
That is a very good question. That's one of the reasons we wrote the book. things I've learned about now that we've been doing this for a little over a year, parents have contacted me, is that they take their book. Now, you and I both know when you got a senior in high school, their brain's somewhere else.
Right,
but
right.
if you can sit down with your 8th, 9th, or 10th grade boy or girl and sit down with a book or the subject areas in the book and said, let's talk about this at the dinner table. And you don't judge. You don't look. You can't do that.
Right,
Or
right,
that's
right,
right. You know,
right,
you just
right.
let's talk about each one of these. You know, maybe this law is wrong or this law is right, but you need to know what these laws are, and let's have an open dialogue. What I found is that parents that had a tough time communicating with their kids when they would go through these subject areas that we list in the book, alcohol, drugs, sex, driving, without being judgmental, it gives them a chance to talk about it.
Before we close out this evening, 7 deadly sins. Talk to us about that.
The 7 deadly sins is a law that was passed in 1994, and it says if you're 13 years of age or older and you commit one of the 7 deadly sins, you have to be arrested, prosecuted, tried, and if convicted, punished just as if any adult would be. I tried the first 7 deadly sin case in the state where a 14-year-old boy killed a 15-year-old boy, and he got 25 years in prison without parole. The 7 deadly sins are murder, voluntary manslaughter, armed robbery with a firearm, rape, aggravated child molestation, aggravated sexual battery, and aggravated sodomy. If a person 13 years of age, now the number one question I am asked by kids on my blog or on my webpage, 2 15-year-olds are caught having oral sex. Which one gets prosecuted? The answer is they both get prosecuted as adults because it's one of the 7 deadly sins.
It's one of the 7 deadly sins. We got to take another question.
Okay?
Okay.
This will be the last question for the evening. We've got a viewer who would like to know, if I'm at a party and everyone is drinking, but I'm not, and the police come, what should I do?
Great question. When that police, what will happen is the police officer has probable cause to arrest everybody because the alcohol is there and they all can touch it or they all have access to it. But if you have not been drinking, you tell that officer, I want a breathalyzer test right now, and you write my name down. Because if you haven't been drinking, you take the breathalyzer test, you pass it, then there's no longer probable cause, and he needs to let you go home.
Wow. You know? Gosh. Now, is that in the book?
That's in the book.
Oh, good. All right. Now, let me tell you folks how you can get this book. You can go to ignoranceisnodefense.com. You can order it online. If you order over, how many books is it?
25.
25 books, you can get it for $8.50. One thing that J. Tom didn't talk about was the fact that he self-published this book. That keeps the cost down, and it allows you to get more, get out there and make it available.
Our purpose
to
is
more
to get
people.
the message out.
Just to get the message out. Very good. So now, go to ignoranceisnodefense.com. Order the book, or call, or write, or email synamon@AOL.com. And 20 Women Dialogue will be having more events with you. We're going to make this one of our major initiatives to make sure that we get this information out. So until next week, I say to you, Synamon says, what do you say?
Thank you, Synamon. Thank you for letting me be here.
Thank you. And tell Carol I said hello. We've not met, but I've talked to her a couple of times on the phone. And so she's at Georgia State or University of Georgia? UGA. Okay, teaching me at UGA. Very good. Well, this was good. So what do you think?
Oh, this was great.